It was a Wednesday night, late in September, and I'd just gotten in from a lengthy business trip. I arrived home to find my wife laid up in bed with a terrible migraine headache, and my children sitting on the couch, wrapped up in a heated game of trivia on the PlayStation. I stood there in silence, staring at the stove and listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, trying to decide what to make for dinner. Cooking was the last thing I felt like doing. With my wife sick in bed and the kids getting along, I decided my best bet was just to run out and grab some food for the family. A handful of fast food joints was about our only choice. My daughter asked for chicken wings. I was up for anything as long as I could get everyone's food at the same place. So I decided to drive out to Popeyes, which was only 2 blocks away. I pulled into the parking lot, slipping my truck into one of the 3 remaining open parking spots. There were 12 spots in the little shared parking lot. That seemed pretty busy for a Wednesday night. I got out from behind the wheel and walked into the restaurant. When I stepped to the counter, the familiar face of a pretty young Asian woman smiled at me and said,
"Welcome to Popeyes. May I take your order, sir?"
I looked at the menu board hanging above and said, 2 ghost pepper wings, 3 beans and rice, 3 mashed potatoes, and 2 cinnamon apple pies."
"Okay, just 1 minute. I'll get the order,"
she stated, slipping out of view into the kitchen behind me. As I stood waiting at the counter, I heard the front door open behind me. An old woman, hunched at the shoulders with stringy white hair that hung loosely around her face, walked through the door. She wore a white blouse and dark slacks, pulled high on her waist and cinched tight over her belly button. Her face was pale, the skin wrinkled and matching the veiny flesh that pulled against long, bony fingers on her hands with creepy fingernails. Her eyes were sunken and dark. Hers was a face I did not recall seeing before, but it wasn't her face that caught my attention. It was the baby doll she was cradling in her left arm. Nothing really out of the ordinary about it, just a regular, run-of-the-mill doll with plastic limbs and an all-plastic head sewn onto a stuffed torso. Absent any clothing, the torso was just a stained, rather dingy white color. It wasn't the talking type, but just a standard, old, boring baby doll. And she was talking to it. Her eyeballs rolled in a very weird way as she started making funny faces at the doll, like what we do to make babies laugh. But in her case, the faces she was making could scare a child. Taking out her tongue while moving her hand over her nose, she was pulling off a freak show. I couldn't tell just what the old woman was saying to the doll as she stroked the plastic hair on its head with her long, pale finger. Her voice was lower than a whisper, very raspy and completely inaudible. Her lips moved slowly, as did the hand that rubbed the toy's forehead. The whole thing was a little off-putting, but I've seen the horrible effects of dementia on the elderly, so I passed it off and turned my attention back to the counter. I was just in time to see the young woman come out from the kitchen with 2 large bags of food. I quickly paid for my carryout, exchanged parting pleasantries with the checkout girl, and turned to leave the restaurant. As I began to pass the elderly woman, who still appeared to be comforting her doll, I stepped out toward my left to give her a little extra room. Grabbing the handle to the exit, I lurched backwards as the old woman's hand shot from the plastic toy's forehead and grabbed my forearm. With surprising strength, her cold fingers pressed into my skin. Her fingernails cut deep into my skin as she stared at me, blankly. I'd like to think I could have pulled away with ease, but I can't swear that to be true. Besides, even though the shock hadn't worn off yet, I had no desire to hurt the old woman. I turned to face her to see if maybe she needed help. I looked into those sunken eyes and asked, Are you all right?" Her eyes widened and her grip tightened. It began to hurt. She looked frightened.
"You have to help us."
"Ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean." She looked through the glass door and into the parking lot, like she was really scared for her life. I followed her gaze and looked toward the cars outside. Everything looked just as it did when I arrived. She looked back at me and whispered,
"The black soul is outside."
She began to tremble.
The demon man. He is everywhere.
At this point, I was freaked out enough. Suddenly, she released her grip on my forearm and raised a frail finger toward the window. She pointed toward the vehicles in the lot and began to sob loudly. Ma'am, what is wrong with you? She forced herself to speak again.
He brings death. Death is crawling all over everything.
At that moment, the door beside us opened, and an elderly man, sporting a neatly trimmed beard and leaning on a cane, stepped into the carryout. He moved forward slowly, taking the trembling woman's hand in his own before pulling it to his chest.
It's okay, Ruby. Stay calm. Everything is okay.
The gentleman then turned to me and then smiled warmly.
I'm sorry, young man. She becomes confused on occasion these days.
It's no trouble, sir, I replied, holding the door for the couple as he led her back into the parking lot. Heading out of the carryout myself, I kept one eye on the elderly pair's direction as I climbed into my pickup, setting the 2 bags of dinner in the passenger seat of the truck. I watched as the old man rubbed her shoulders gently, trying to soothe the frazzled woman, very much like she'd been doing with the baby doll. He spoke to her softly, but the old woman's head kept moving from side to side. She seemed to be searching the parking lot for something. A little unnerved and ready for a bellyful of Popeyes chicken, I began to back up, staring into the rearview mirror and finally taking my eyes off the couple. That's when the screaming started.
Don't make me go back in there.
As the old man tried to get her into his car, the old woman turned frantic. I felt bad for the old couple, the poor guy taking care of his ailing wife at this age. But the woman didn't stop. Somehow the old man put her into the car, but she kept on yelling.
The evil is everywhere in there.
Saying this, the woman twisted the doll's head and broke it into 2 pieces. That was enough for me. A cold chill ran down my spine as I turned the truck away and pulled onto the street, nearly clipping a beat-up old Ford as it sped recklessly into the carry-out parking lot. It took me 15 minutes to get home. We all finally ate and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep at all. Whenever I closed my eyes, I could just picture that creepy woman making faces at me, like she was doing to her doll. I woke up with a massive headache and went to the kitchen. My wife was setting breakfast for me at the table. I asked her how she was feeling now, and amidst this chit-chat, I casually turned on the news channel. But as the screen flashed, my eyes got stuck on the television.
Last night, an old man was found murdered in the parking lot of Popeyes food joint. He was found stabbed with a screwdriver to his neck inside his car with no one else around. After inquiring to the employees at Popeyes, the cops discovered the old man was trying to take an old lady home who seemed mentally unstable. They suspected the lady stabbed him in her poor mental state, but as they searched the house of this couple, a shocking revelation took place. The cops found the old lady in the house when they went to check the man's property. They also found a hidden room in the basement with chains, handcuffs, and other torture devices. It looks like this old man abducted his crush a long time ago and kept her captive in his house all these years. The torture and sickening treatment that were done to this woman for all these years took a toll on her mental health. When the cops took her to the station, she only said 3 spine-chilling words: "I'm free now." The FBI has taken over this investigation. They are trying to find out the true identity of this man and the woman. More on this will be provided with the unfolding of the ongoing investigation.
I dropped the coffee cup and it shattered into pieces. My wife came rushing, thinking I was about to get a heart attack or something. Couldn't blame her though, because as soon as I heard the news, my face turned pale. I couldn't even feel my legs for a few moments. I told my wife everything that happened last night at the Popeyes. Now it makes complete sense to me what the old woman was saying in there. She was talking about this old man who kept her prisoner for God knows how many years.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the video. If so, please leave a like. And also, a small percentage of people that watch my videos are actually subscribed. If you want to support this channel and make this channel reach the 1 million mark, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can change your mind later. Enjoy.
I am a dead woman. I have nothing to lose. I spend every night walking, hooded through alleys so dark and dangerous they would terrify the bravest people. My only companion is a magnum that I keep in my pocket, ready to be fired at the person who ruined my life. I know that many will say I'm a terrible person, consumed by anger and revenge. But before you say anything about me, listen to my story. The day it all happened, I was in a particularly good mood. I had been working at Popeyes Fried Chicken for a few months, and that Friday I was on the night shift. I was the cashier, and I was only accompanied by Richard, the cook, and Blake, who was going to be cleaning the entire restaurant. The night was slow, and the restaurant was empty, but at least we could chat with each other without being busy. Everything was going more than fine until a strange man walked in. This man was very tall and imposing. His gray beard and hair were very long. His small brown eyes were lost in his long, hard face. But when I saw him, I was struck by how full of hatred and violence he was as he looked at us. The man walked over and sat down at a table without asking for food. Instead of sitting facing the table, he turned his chair in our direction and just stared at us.
Okay, he is awkward.
Shut up! He's going to hear us.
Look how far away he is. There's no way that Grandpa will hear us.
What do we do? Should we approach him? Ask him what he wants?
Good idea. Let's ask him who he wants to kill first.
Hell no. We serve here. If he wants to eat, let him come up and place his order like everyone else.
Ah, fuck it. I'll go ask him. The faster he eats, the faster he'll go.
Oh my God.
Blake whispered to me as he walked past me. Determined, I walked in the direction of this man. Even though I was only a few meters away, I felt like I had never walked so far in my life. My legs started to ache, and as I got closer to him, I felt an oppressive atmosphere and started to shake. Still, I spoke to him with all the professionalism I could muster at the time. Good evening, sir. Would you like to order something? His penetrating gaze met mine, and I felt myself getting overwhelmed. His lips began to move for the first time since he entered, and the firmness of his raspy voice left me paralyzed with fear.
No.
No problem, sir. When you're ready, just approach and let me know. After that little exchange of words, I was terrified. I wanted to run with my coworkers, crying, but I kept my composure. I felt like a lamb talking to a hungry tiger. This man was truly terrifying.
Rose, you're pale. What did he say to you?
Nothing. I asked him if he wanted to order anything, and he just said no. He gave me a really bad vibe.
Should I say something to him?
No, don't do that. Let's wait for him to leave.
Let's be ready to call the police. This gives me a bad feeling.
A few more minutes passed, and nothing had changed. The man was still staring at us, watching our every move. Blake had cleaned the bathrooms, but decided to stay nearby, just in case. The freezing silence of the restaurant was suddenly cut short as a group of 4 guys came in, laughing, and sat down at a table near the man. I've never been so happy to hear teenagers.
I know, right?
I kept glancing sideways at the man and saw how, for the first time, he stopped looking at us. His eyes went to the teenagers, who didn't even notice him. The man stood up and sat down at their table, and they looked at him in shock.
What the fuck is he doing?
The man began to speak to the confused looks of the teenagers. It wasn't more than a few seconds before the man stood up and returned to his original position, looking at us again. Meanwhile, the teenagers were no longer laughing. They all looked at each other in confusion and, without saying a word, grabbed their things and left the restaurant.
Oh no, that's it!
Blake, stop it. You don't know what this man is capable of. Let's call the police. Blake walked toward the man, and when he was face to face with him, he spoke angrily.
Sir, we can tolerate you sitting there without ordering food, but you can't intimidate our customers like that. If you don't leave, I will be forced to...
Before Blake could finish the sentence, we heard a loud explosion. Blake stopped talking, and with a blank stare, he touched his body until he found a huge hole in his chest and fell, instantly dead. The man was still sitting in his seat, looking at us, but now with a magnum in his hand.
No! Blake!
We both screamed, unable to believe what had just happened. The man got up, pointing the gun at us and walking in our direction. We both raised our hands in terror.
Don't move a muscle.
His raspy voice sounded calm, but determined. He went straight to the kitchen and stood next to Richard, who was crying in panic.
Please, sir, don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. Ah!
Without Richard being able to react, the man grabbed his head with enormous strength, lifted it up, and plunged it into the boiling oil.
No!
Richard's resistance ended only a few seconds after it began. His body still moved a little reflexively, but he was already dead. I took advantage of this distraction to run to the back exit, but suddenly I heard another gunshot noise and fell down. Something had stung me in my leg. But when I realized what had happened, the pain increased a lot and blood began to come out as a result of my bullet wound. Stunned, I watched from the floor as the man quickly moved to my side.
Why are you doing this to us?
I had nothing else to do.
Just because he had nothing else to do? The idea that this man had killed my two friends just out of boredom awakened something in me. I looked at him with uncontainable anger and tried to get up, but I was kicked in the face.
You still have plenty of energy. How about a game to decide if you survive?
Fuck you.
Without paying attention to me, he opened the barrel of his magnum and spun it around. After closing it, he quickly pointed it at my head and pulled the trigger. But the bullet didn't come out. My anger faded, and I covered my face in fear.
What the hell are you doing?
Again, he rotated the barrel of his gun and shot at me, but the bullet didn't come.
Stop it, you fucking psycho!
He turned the barrel one last time, but I was no longer willing to take another shot, so I quickly rushed toward him. Surprised by my advance, he fired quickly toward my head. This time, the bullet did go out. The fact that I had thrown myself against him saved my life. Due to the movement of my head, the bullet went through both cheeks of my face and back out. I fell back to the ground, bloodied.
It seems that Lady Luck is on your side, little girl.
The psycho pointed the gun at my head again. I no longer had the energy to defend myself. I had to accept my fate.
Bang.
The man said this with a small smile, but he didn't shoot. Satisfied, he turned around and left the restaurant through the back door. While stunned by the sound of gunfire, I heard many sirens and saw several policemen entering the restaurant, rescuing me. The recovery was long and exhaustive. The doctors told me it was a miracle that I survived. The cost of doing so was very high, as the last bullet had gone through my face and taken out many teeth along the way. Eventually, my leg was able to recover, but my face was ruined forever. I didn't work anymore, and I never saw my friends or family again. I decided to live off my savings and bought a Magnum, similar to the one that man had. Today, I walk the streets near the Popeye, looking for that bastard who ruined my life. I know I'll find him, and when I do, I'll spin the barrel of my gun as he did with me, but I'll do it with all the bullets. I'm from a small town. I mean small. Nothing much happened other than take your tractor to work day. I was a high school senior. We had all known each other since kindergarten. I could give you the first, middle, and last names of every kid in my class. The biggest thing to happen to our town was the day we got the Popeyes. The only reason we got one was that we were right off the highway, and people passing through would make up for our small population size. Needless to say, we were thrilled. It was a small outlet with nothing much of an inside, but at least it had a drive-through. The building itself was stacked right next to a mall, so it had a tiny parking lot. The actual drive-through was pinned against a brick wall. Once you were in line, you had no choice but to keep going. This was especially annoying when the people in front of you had long orders. The line could fit about 5 cars back to back, and it was always full. Let me just say, the Popeyes didn't last long. 8 months after it opened, it was shut down. I got to see the reason why firsthand. It was spring break. My mom and I were heading to the mall, which was almost an hour away. It was hot. I was the one who suggested we stop at the Popeyes before heading out. My mom didn't want to. She said it was a waste of money. But I nagged her until she agreed. We pulled up to the drive-thru, and there were 4 cars ahead of us. My mom sighed but got in line. 3 more cars pulled in back of us. We were all stuck like peas in a pod, sweating with the heat of the day.
I want something cold.
She rolled her eyes. Hawaiian punch?
Yes, please.
I pulled out my phone and Snapchatted some friends.
Chilling with the mom,
I typed as I snapped a pic of us. My mom laughed and pushed the phone away.
Stop it.
Suddenly, a loud bang filled the air. We looked at each other in surprise.
Mom, was that a gunshot?
No way, it was probably just a car backfiring. We sat in silence for the next few minutes. I think we both sensed something to change. Then, the scream came. It was a man's. Instinctively, I stuck my head out the window to see what was going on. Because of how packed in we were against the buildings, we couldn't open our doors. But I was small enough that I could get half my body out the window to view the scene. There was a figure standing on the hood of a car. It was about 4 cars ahead of us. He wore a Grinch mask. In his hands was a gun. He had it pointed down toward the windshield.
Please, don't! Just let us go! Please, 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 please.
Someone inside the car was screaming, begging for help. My mother pulled me into the car right before the gun fired again, and then one more time. The windshield shattered, and it lit up the alley in fear.
We need to get out of here,
my mom said. She looked around wildly, knowing that we were blocked in. The cars behind us weren't moving, and neither were the cars in front. None of us could open our doors.
Are we going to die?
My mom put the car in reverse and slammed on the gas. Because we weren't moving, we couldn't get enough speed. She struck the car behind her, which faltered but didn't move. My mom's panic was getting worse. She tried going forward, but the same thing happened. We could see the people in the other cars panicking as well. The woman in front of us was banging her door against the brick of the building, trying desperately to climb through. She managed to edge halfway out, but got stuck. The man in the Grinch mask calmly climbed over the car he had just shot into and moved on to the next one. I watched in horror as he tapped on their windshield. There was a couple in the front seat. I could see them holding each other in dismay.
Roll down your window,
The masked man said, loudly. The seconds ticked by. People in the cars around us were screaming. My mom and I were quiet.
Roll it down now!
The driver's side window slowly rolled down. We could hear a man's voice from inside.
Please, we have kids in the car. Don't hurt us. We are good people. Please.
The masked man leaned over toward the open window and shot the couple 2 times. Blood erupted from the car. Their windows were painted red. Now we could hear the cries of children. My mom grabbed my hand. She swallowed slowly. Get down.
What?
Get down, as far under the seat as possible. He may not see you.
But Mom!
My words were interrupted by a chorus of gunshots. The kids' cries ceased. Without another word, I folded myself into the space under the dashboard. I got as small as possible. My mom angled her purse next to me, nearly covering the spot I was in. She was breathing hard. A woman's voice was piercing the alleyway.
Why? Why are you doing this?
I realized it must be the woman trying to get out of her car. She got stuck between her car and the wall. I shut my eyes, trying not to picture her hanging there, just waiting to be shot down. Even my mom looked away as the shot rang out. Blood sprayed. My mom braced herself against the steering wheel. She looked ahead, as if entranced. I sobbed quietly. I could feel the man jump onto our car hood. His footsteps were loud right above us. I glanced toward my mother. She didn't dare look at me. The man peeked in from the open window of my mom's side. He then pointed the gun at her head. I couldn't see his real face, but I got the feeling he was smiling. My mom suddenly reached out and grabbed the gun. I nearly knocked my head against the dashboard in surprise. The man must have been surprised too, because the gun came easily out of his grip. She aimed upward and pulled the trigger. She shot him twice. Blood was dripping down the windshield and all over her clothes. The mask was covered in holes. She kept pulling the trigger, even though nothing came out. I breathed a huge sigh. I couldn't believe she had just done that. My mom, a small-town housewife, just killed a murderer. But before I could crawl out, another pop sounded. It came from my side of the car. I watched in horror as blood sprinkled out the back of her skull. She fell forward onto the steering wheel, her nose on the horn. I slowly turned my head to my side of the car, where someone wearing a Barbie mask was peering down. She cocked her head to the side, surveying her work. She must not have seen me, because she disappeared. I felt her step off our car onto someone else's. I tried to breathe, but nothing came out. I stayed under the seat for nearly an hour. The police arrived within 20 minutes of the first shot, but I couldn't get myself to move. They only found me after using the jaws of life to open up the top of our car to pull my mom out. When the officer saw me, her face crumpled. She could see the fear still etched onto my face. I was the only survivor from the drive-thru. Altogether, 8 people were shot to death, including 3 kids under the age of 8. The man in the Grinch mask was later identified as a radical animal rights activist. They planned this event to protest against Popeyes for butchering chickens for their signature fried chicken. Despite their intent, no one who worked at Popeyes was injured. It was just those of us in line. They never found the other person. My mom died bravely, and I still cling to that. Never in my life would I have expected her to grab a gun from a crazed killer. She did it for me, to save me. There is one thing that still eats me up inside, because despite their horrible actions, all of the death and destruction those murderers caused, the event actually worked, at least for me. I know I will never go to a Popeyes again.